The unlikely encounter. The Ancestral Library of Zoria drifted silently through the cosmic void, suspended within the dying breath of a collapsing star system. Its crystalline walls pulsed with harvested starlight, creating an ethereal glow that had persisted for millennia. Inside this floating sanctuary, towering bookshelves stretched toward vaulted ceilings, their ancient tomes whispering secrets of 12 lost civilizations. At the heart of this labyrinth sat Scaith, a magnificent dragon-like being of the Draconus species. His bronze scales caught the amber light filtering through stained glass windows, each one shimmering with an otherworldly iridescence. Coiled regally upon an ornate throne, his massive tail wrapped protectively around a detailed star map, one that revealed forgotten hyperspace routes worth more than entire planets. His golden eyes, ancient and knowing, narrowed as they fixed upon an unexpected sight, a human woman in a simple cleaning uniform, gripping a worn mop like it was some kind of weapon. Elise Durant had no idea how she'd ended up assigned to clean the most mysterious library in the galaxy. One day she was scrubbing floors on a space station, the next she was standing in what looked like a fantasy cathedral mixed with alien technology. The job posting had been vague, custodial services required, remote location, but the pay was too good to refuse. Now she understood why. You dare approach the map of Elysium with that implement of filth? Scaith's voice rumbled through the chamber like distant thunder, each word dripping with theatrical disdain. His claw gestured at her mop as if it might spontaneously combust from his sheer indignation. Elise planted the mop's wooden handle firmly on the marble floor and crossed her arms, meeting the dragon's intimidating gaze without flinching. She'd dealt with difficult bosses before, but never one with scales and the ability to breathe energy beams. Dust, she said flatly. The single word hung in the air between them like a challenge. Scaith recoiled, his magnificent wings flexing slightly. Dust, he echoed, his voice climbing in pitch with disbelief. Yes. Dust. Everywhere. Elise gestured around the grand chamber with her free hand. On the books, on the maps, on your precious chair. Do you know what dust does to ancient manuscripts? It eats them alive. So unless you want your priceless library to disintegrate into cosmic debris, I suggest you let me do my job. For several heartbeats, silence stretched between them, broken only by the gentle hum of the library's energy conduits. Scaith's tail twitched, curling tighter around the star map as he searched Elise's face for any sign of fear or deference. He found none. A low growl emanated from his throat. You humans, he began, his voice quieter but no less dangerous, always so brash, so simplistic. Do you truly comprehend the magnitude of what lies within these walls? This library contains the collective knowledge of 12 civilizations. Each tome, each relic is more valuable than your entire species' pitiful existence. I don't have to comprehend it, Elise countered, stepping forward with her mop raised like a banner. I just have to clean it. The dragon's nostrils flared as he exhaled a plume of warm, cinnamon-scented air, a quirk of Draconus metabolism that Elise found oddly endearing despite the circumstances. Still, she held her ground, and for the first time in decades, the mighty Scaith found himself completely at a loss for words. It was a moment of uneasy truce, born not of mutual respect but of sheer, stubborn necessity. Neither could have foreseen that this petty argument over dust would soon spiral into something far more significant, an alliance that would be tested by fire, blood, and the dark ambitions of those who hunted dragons among the stars. The breach. Hours had passed since their initial confrontation, and Elise had claimed the library's main hall as her battlefield against centuries of neglect. Her mop moved in practiced arcs, cutting through layers of cosmic dust while candlelight flickered across her determined features. Every so often, she caught Scaith watching her from his elevated perch, his golden eyes tracking her movements with what she could only describe as fascinated bewilderment. Do all humans exhibit such irrational persistence? The dragon finally asked, breaking the comfortable rhythm of her work. Elise paused, leaning against the mop handle as she regarded him with amusement. You'd be surprised. Persistence is kind of our thing. How do you think we made it to the stars in the first place? Before Scaith could formulate a response, the library's ambient hum shifted, growing louder and more insistent. The air itself seemed to vibrate with tension, and a cold, metallic taste settled on Elise's tongue like a warning. Scaith's entire demeanor transformed in an instant. His wings flared wide, his claws digging deep grooves into the armrests of his throne. The casual arrogance that had defined their earlier interaction vanished, replaced by predatory alertness. "Something is wrong," he muttered, his voice stripped of its usual condescension. Elise frowned, instinctively gripping her mop tighter. "What kind of wrong?" The dragon rose to his full, imposing height, his shadow stretching across the ancient texts like a dark omen. "The library's protective wards have been breached. We have intruders." As if summoned by his words, the massive double doors at the far end of the hall groaned open with ominous finality. Silhouetted against the dim corridor beyond, a squad of armored figures advanced with military precision. Their weapons were raised, their visors glowing an unnatural red that painted the marble floor in bloody light. "Draconus hybrid detected," one of them announced in a voice devoid of emotion, filtered through mechanical augmentation. "Objective, secure the specimen." Scaith's response was immediate and primal. His wings spread to their full, magnificent span as he positioned himself between the intruders and the heart of his sanctuary. "No one defile this sacred place," he growled, his voice like molten steel poured over ancient stone. Elise, meanwhile, grabbed the nearest heavy object she could find, a brass candelabra that had probably been crafted by hands long turned to dust. She hefted it like a club, her heart hammering against her ribs. "Who are these guys?" she hissed. "GenCorp operatives," Scaith replied without taking his eyes off the advancing soldiers. "Corporate mercenaries. They've been hunting my kind for decades, hoping to harvest our DNA for their twisted experiments." "Great," Elise muttered, backing closer to the dragon despite every instinct screaming at her to run. Because this day wasn't weird enough already. The lead soldier stepped forward, his plasma rifle tracking Scaith's movements with mechanical precision. "Stand down, Draconus. Surrender now, and no harm will come to your human companion." Scaith's laugh was a deep, guttural sound that seemed to shake the very foundations of the library. "You dare threaten me in my own domain? You've made a grave mistake, little soldier." Without warning, the dragon unleashed a torrent of concentrated energy from his maw, a beam of pure starlight that struck the lead operative head-on. The soldier flew backward like a ragdoll, crashing into a bookshelf with enough force to send ancient tomes cascading to the floor. The remaining mercenaries scattered, their weapons painting the air with deadly plasma bolts. Scaith roared his defiance and launched himself into the fray, his claws tearing through military-grade armor as if it were paper. But for every soldier he incapacitated, two more seemed to take their place. Elise ducked behind a marble desk, her mind racing as chaos erupted around her. Plasma bolts streaked overhead, shattering priceless artifacts and sending crystal shards raining down like deadly confetti. The magnificent library was being torn apart by violence, and she was caught in the middle with nothing but a mop and a candelabra. But Elise Durant hadn't survived the rough neighborhoods of Earth and the lawless frontier stations by backing down from a fight. Unexpected alliance. The battle raged with increasing intensity, ancient wisdom literally burning around them as plasma fire ignited scrolls and melted crystal fixtures. Scaith fought with the fury of his ancestors, but even his formidable abilities were being overwhelmed by the sheer number of attackers. His bronze scales, though naturally armored, showed scorch marks from near misses, and his breathing had become labored. "Hey, fire breath!" Elise shouted over the cacophony of weapons fire and Scaith's roars. "You've got backup, remember?" Before the dragon could process her words, Elise darted from her hiding spot like a woman possessed. The brass candelabra became an extension of her will as she brought it down hard on the visor of the nearest soldier. The impact sent spiderweb cracks across the reinforced glass and dropped the mercenary to his knees. Another operative spun to face this unexpected threat, only to be temporarily blinded by a spray of industrial cleaning solution from Elise's utility belt. It wasn't much, she'd use stronger stuff to clean coffee stains, but it was enough to give Scaith the opening he needed. With a mighty leap that defied his massive size, the dragon landed in the center of the remaining group and unleashed another devastating energy blast. The wave of concentrated starlight scattered the mercenaries like leaves in a cosmic wind, their armor smoking as they retreated toward the breached entrance. For a moment, blessed silence returned to the library, broken only by Elise's ragged breathing and the distant hum of damaged systems. She leaned heavily against a bookshelf, her hands trembling as adrenaline coursed through her system. Around them, the evidence of battle was everywhere, scorched walls, shattered artifacts, and the acrid smell of melted metal. Scaith stood amidst the wreckage, his scales dulled with exhaustion but his posture still proud. He regarded Elise with something that might have been respect. "You're not bad for a janitor," he admitted grudgingly. Elise managed a weak laugh, wiping sweat from her forehead with the back of her hand. "And you're not bad for a talking lizard." The dragon's eyes narrowed, but there was definitely amusement glinting in their golden depths. "Draconus," he corrected with mock severity. "Not lizard." "Whatever," Elise waved him off, surveying the destruction around them. "Just help me figure out how to clean up this mess. Do you have insurance for this place?" Before Scaith could respond to such an absurd question, the library's energy conduits flared to life with urgent blue light. The damaged system struggled to process new information, and when they succeeded, a disembodied voice echoed through the chamber, cold, mechanical, and utterly without mercy. "Warning, secondary breach detected. Hostile reinforcements inbound. Estimated arrival, 2 minutes." Scaith and Elise exchanged a look that transcended their earlier animosity. In that shared glance was the recognition that their fight was far from over, and that their survival now depended on the most unlikely partnership either had ever imagined. 2 minutes, Elise said, hefting her makeshift weapons. "Got any brilliant dragon strategies?" Scaith's smile revealed teeth that could have carved through starship hulls. "As a matter of fact, I do. But you're not going to like it. Try me. We're going to have to wake up the librarian." The way he said it made Elise's blood run cold. "That doesn't sound like a good thing." "It's not," Scaith admitted, his golden eyes already scanning the chamber for something Elise couldn't see. "The Librarian Core is an ancient AI left by this library's builders. It's been dormant for centuries, but it has defensive capabilities that could level a small moon. And the downside? It considers all organic life forms to be potential contaminants. Including us." Elise stared at him for a long moment, then began laughing, not from humor, but from the sheer absurdity of their situation. "So let me get this straight. To save ourselves from the corporate killers, we need to wake up an ancient murder robot that wants to kill us too?" "Essentially, yes." "Great. Absolutely great." She adjusted her grip on the candelabra. "Well, what are we waiting for? Let's wake up the killer robot." The librarian awakens. The reinforcements arrived exactly as predicted, their heavy boots thundering against the marble floors as they breached the library's inner sanctum. This second wave was different, larger, more heavily armed, with weapons that hummed with barely contained energy. These weren't just corporate mercenaries, they were GenCorp's elite extraction team, equipped with technology specifically designed to hunt and capture beings like Scaith. "There," Scaith directed, his claw pointing to an ornate panel hidden behind a cascade of hanging crystal chains. "The librarian's activation matrix. We'll need to." A plasma bolt seared the air inches from his head, cutting off his explanation. The new wave of soldiers had spotted them and were advancing with methodical precision, their weapons locked onto the dragon's massive form. "No time for explanations," Elise shouted, ducking as another energy blast shattered a nearby statue. "Just tell me what to do. The central crystal, you need to place both hands on it and speak the activation phrase, 'Keeper of knowledge, guardian of wisdom, I call upon thee to defend thy sacred charge.'" Elise sprinted toward the panel, dodging debris and weapon fire as Scaith engaged the leading soldiers. His energy blasts lit up the chamber like deadly fireworks, but she could see he was tiring. Each attack came slower than the last, and his scales were beginning to show serious damage. Her hands found the crystal, a multifaceted gem that felt warm and seemed to pulse with its own heartbeat. The activation phrase felt ancient on her tongue, words that carried weight beyond their meaning. As the last syllable left her lips, the crystal blazed with blinding light. The change was immediate and terrifying. Every surface in the library came alive with streams of coherent light. The very air began to shimmer as holographic interfaces materialized throughout the chamber. And then, from speakers that had been hidden within the walls for millennia, came a voice that was both beautiful and utterly inhuman. System reactivation complete. Analyzing threat matrix. The advancing soldiers froze as scanning beams played across their armor. Within seconds, the librarian's verdict was delivered with chilling efficiency. Unauthorized organic entities detected. Corporate genetic extraction protocols identified. Initiating defensive measures. What happened next defied every law of physics Elise thought she understood. The library itself became a weapon. Shelves rearranged themselves into barriers, crystal formations erupted from the floor to create defensive positions, and most impressively, beams of pure energy began materializing from thin air to target the intruders. The GenCorp soldiers' advanced armor proved useless against technology that predated their civilization by thousands of years. One by one, they were neutralized, not killed, Elise realized with relief, but somehow frozen in stasis fields that rendered them completely immobile. Perimeter secured, the librarian announced. Analyzing remaining organic presences. This was the moment Scaith had dreaded. Twin scanning beams focused on him and Elise, analyzing everything from their genetic structure to their recent actions. For several heartbeats, their fate hung in the balance. Draconus hybrid, identified as facility guardian. Status, authorized. Scaith exhaled a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. Human female, genetic structure unknown. Recent actions indicate facility maintenance protocols. Analyzing intent. Anomaly detected. Elise felt her heart stop. Anomaly. Subject exhibits genuine care for preservation of archived materials. Unusual trait in contemporary organic species. Designation, Assistant Curator, Provisional Status. The librarian's tone actually seemed to warm slightly. Greetings, Assistant Curator. Your dedication to dust mitigation has been noted and appreciated. Elise blinked in amazement. It actually thanked me for cleaning. The librarian values proper maintenance above all else, Scaith explained, his own voice filled with wonder. In its assessment, your commitment to preserving these ancient texts outweighs the usual prejudice against organic contamination. The immediate threat was over, but as the adrenaline faded, both Elise and Scaith realized that everything had changed. They were no longer just a dragon and a janitor thrown together by circumstance. The librarian had officially recognized them as a team, guardian and curator, protector and preserver. So, Elise said, looking around at the transformed library where holographic displays now provided detailed information about each artifact, what happens now? Scaith's smile was genuine for the first time since she'd met him. Now we have work to do. A library this magnificent deserves the best care possible. And the GenCorp soldiers? The librarian will hold them in stasis until their corporate masters realize that some treasures are too valuable to steal, and too well protected to threaten. A new beginning. 3 months had passed since the GenCorp incident, and the Ancestral Library of Zoria had never looked better. Under Elise's dedicated care and the librarian's advanced maintenance systems, centuries of neglect had been systematically eliminated. Ancient texts were properly preserved, crystal formations gleamed with renewed brilliance, and even Scaith had to admit that the absence of dust made everything far more pleasant. The dragon no longer lounged on his throne with arrogant disdain. Instead, he could often be found working alongside Elise, carefully cataloging artifacts or sharing stories about the civilizations that had created them. Their partnership had evolved from necessity to something neither had expected, genuine friendship. The Codex of Stellar Cartography needs to be moved to the climate-controlled vault, Scaith announced, gently lifting an ancient star map with claws that had once seemed only capable of destruction. His touch was reverent now, informed by Elise's patient lessons about proper artifact handling. Already on it, Elise replied, activating the vault's environmental controls with the same casual efficiency she'd once reserved for operating floor buffers. The librarian had upgraded her access privileges significantly, recognizing her as an invaluable member of the facility's preservation team. Their routine was interrupted by a familiar chime, the library's communication system announcing an incoming transmission. The librarian's voice filled the chamber with news that made both guardians tense. Incoming priority message from Galactic Heritage Foundation. Authentication confirmed. A holographic figure materialized before them, an elderly woman with kind eyes and official credentials floating beside her image. Greetings, Guardian Scaith and Curator Durant. I am Director Chen of the Heritage Foundation. We've been monitoring the situation at your facility with great interest. Scaith moved protectively closer to Elise, old instincts dying hard. What do you want with us? Director Chen smiled warmly. Nothing threatening, I assure you. Quite the contrary, we want to offer you official recognition and support. The preservation work you've accomplished has come to our attention through monitoring networks, and frankly, it's extraordinary. She gestured, and additional holograms appeared showing documentation and funding authorizations. The Foundation would like to formally recognize the Ancestral Library of Zoria as a protected heritage site, with full legal backing to prevent any future corporate incursions. More importantly, we want to offer you resources, proper equipment, additional staff if desired, and connection to our network of preservation specialists. Elise and Scaith exchanged glances, their silent communication perfected through months of partnership. There's no catch? Elise asked suspiciously. No strings attached. None whatsoever. Your methods speak for themselves. A human custodian and a Draconus guardian working together to preserve ancient knowledge. That's exactly the kind of collaboration our founders envisioned when they established the Heritage Foundation. The offer was everything they could have hoped for: legitimacy, protection, and resources to continue their work on a scale they'd never imagined possible. We accept, Scaith said formally, speaking for both of them. With the condition that operational control remains with the current staff. Of course. The Foundation has learned that the best preservation happens when passionate individuals are given the freedom to pursue their calling without interference. After the transmission ended, silence settled over the library, not the tense quiet of their first meeting, but the comfortable peace of shared purpose. So, Elise said, hefting her mop with mock ceremony, ready to clean up the galaxy, one ancient library at a time. Scaith's laugh was warm and genuine. With you as my partner, I believe we can preserve knowledge that was never meant to be lost. The librarian's voice joined their conversation, its tone carrying what could almost be described as contentment. Objectives updated, preservation protocols expanded to galactic scale. Assistant Curator Durant, your dust mitigation expertise will be invaluable. Elise grinned, looking around at the magnificent space that had become her true home. She'd started as a simple janitor looking for decent pay, but she'd found something far more valuable: purpose, partnership, and the chance to help preserve the wisdom of ages for future generations. Outside the crystal walls, stars died and were born in the eternal dance of the cosmos. But within the Ancestral Library of Zoria, knowledge lived on, protected by the most unlikely team in the galaxy, a dragon who'd learned that sharing wisdom was more fulfilling than hoarding it, a human who'd discovered that some things were worth fighting for, and an ancient AI that had found its purpose renewed. The universe was vast and often dangerous, but in this floating sanctuary among the stars, the most important treasures of 12 civilizations were safe, clean, and ready to inspire whatever species might be brave enough to seek them out. And if those future seekers had any doubts about the importance of proper maintenance and respectful curiosity, they would quickly learn from Curator Durant and Guardian Scaith that some lessons are universal. Whether you have scales, skin, or circuits, taking care of precious things is everyone's responsibility. The end.